Grow your practice, grow your wealth, grow your impact. Find out how to spend less time in the dental chair and more time on the things you love.
Welcome back to the Dental Well Podcast. Glad to have you back for another episode. I got a text on Friday night about one of our episodes recently and you know how it impacted a doctor in their philosophy and their movement. So we love to hear that. We love to hear the feedback.
Find a time to watch it. I always find it interesting. We always I watched it, Saturday morning or Friday night. I'm like, that's a good thing to do on a Friday night.
Hey, look, that's what happens, right? And so, thank you for the feedback. We love the numbers and we love what you guys are doing. We love being a part of this podcast and bringing it to you.
Absolutely.
Matthew, what do you want to talk about today?
I actually want to talk about the quote that you referenced. I know somebody sent you a quote this morning, and I'd like to just further go into detail about what the quote is and discuss it a little bit, how it relates to a dental practice.
I got to open my phone now. Hold on, let's see. Where's this thing at? That quote.
Hopefully Face ID is working here.
This person listens to this podcast, and I told him I was going to steal it if I someday and use it on the podcast. So Matthew and I were talking about this quote this morning. I thought it was really interesting. That's what brought it up. So I want to read this quote. It's by Maya Angelou, and it's a really cool quote. And it made me think about the work we do, and it made me think about the beginning of the year and drive and those types of things. But here's what it says. I'll read it to you, and then we'll talk through it. Most people don't grow up. It's too damn difficult. What happens is most people get older. That's the truth of it. They honor their credit cards, they find parking spaces, they marry, they have the nerve to have children, but they don't actually grow up. Not really. They get older, but to grow up costs the earth. The earth. It means you take responsibility for the time you take up, for the space you occupy. It's serious business, and you find out what it costs to love and to lose, to dare and to fail, and maybe even more to succeed. Woo! That's like a good quote to start off the podcast. And what you and I were sharing was, I said, it makes me think when I read that quote, it made me think of people that don't live to their potential. Yeah. Because it's this idea of, I went to dental school, I was an associate, I got a practice, I had some kids, I grow at a modest 3% per year, and then it's like, you're just getting older. Like, you're not actually growing. You're not actually becoming successful. You're not actually pushing yourself.
People like to be comfortable.
Yeah.
They hate to stretch themselves to where they get to a point. I mean, in one of our workshops we always show, and that just made me think about it, was the Apple risk takers video, where saying, the risk takers are the ones that are going to change the world. It's the people that are complacent, which we tend to find in most dental practices.
Well, I think that a doctor said to me recently, and I think I might even mention on the podcast, is that dentists by nature are conservative. Yeah. That one of the reasons they got into dentistry is because they're conservative by nature and they're conservative people. They knew it was a conservative profession, and they knew they could work 4 days a week, and they knew that it was a great income, for working 4 days a week. And there wasn't a lot of, medical industry has a lot more ups and downs with insurance and all kinds of things, and then there's different movements. Dentistry is pretty predictable, so it's a conservative type industry. And so I was thinking when I read that quote, it just instantly was like, I thought about dentists that I've met along the way who just get older. Mm-hmm. And for me, I remember talking to a doctor years ago, and this doctor had bought this practice, but this doctor thought that he was really successful. Yeah. And I said to this doctor, I said, you bought this practice 5 years ago. When you bought the practice, it was doing 1.6 million. Today it's doing 1.8, but yet you think you know it all. Yeah. And I'm going to tell you right now, you're going to wake up 10 years from now and it's going to be a $1.9 million practice, and you've got nowhere.
But you'll also brag that you got it from 1.5 to 1.9.
That's So, and by the way, yes, some of this is like, hold on, is he talking about me? Yes, I'm absolutely calling you out. It is my conviction. It is my obligation to call you out and say, what the hell are you doing? This is your life. Like, this is it. And I look at that and I just go, how many dentists are just growing older? That year by year by year. So we start the year off, they set these goals. And they're ambitious goals. They don't follow through. They don't follow in consulting advice. They don't lean in. People are, I don't want to spend $1,000, heaven forbid. And so that they don't get the advice. And all that happens in their life, it's interesting. Their net worth grows to some extent because of just pure inflation. Yeah. But but they never took a risk. Like I know for myself, like I will never be the person that wakes up at 85 and says, well, I'm glad I played it safe. Yeah. And so are people growing? Are they really growing? And in this industry, we look around and the only people that are truly, well, that's not true. There are people that are growing, but the vast majority of the growth in this industry right now is happening from private equity. Yeah. It's not even happening within its own profession.
I think when you look at the industry as a whole, I feel one of the main causing factors of that is dentists are looking at their practice as a dental practice. And we always say, look at it as a business. They just look at what all the other dentists are doing and they're just growing it to about 1 million. When they get over the 1 million mark, they're pretty happy with that. And they try to see how much they can do before they have to bring in an associate, ultimately bring in an associate and be 1.5. Well, if you look at that over a stretch of 20 years, there's no business that wants to be at that point where they're at 1 million, 1.5 for 20 years. They're always trying to grow. And I think it's the mindset of I'm a dentist and not a business owner that really hinders them from taking it to the next level.
I mean, I'm thinking about they listen to this podcast, so they know I'm talking about them, and they're up in the north part of the country. And so, and there's 3 of them. And so I think about them and I think about this idea. They're always investing, pushing, growing, challenging, bringing new ideas, new techniques, new thoughts, right? New ways to do things. And it's interesting when I look at them and I go, wow, that is a group of people who is literally growing. They're not getting older. They're growing. In fact, it feels like they're getting younger. But they're not just growing. They're not okay being complacent. They're not okay sitting back. They have to look at what they're doing and say, we're going to swing for the damn fences because that's what you do in business. And so I find in this profession, there's so much conservatism around growth. And the question, what a great question I think to ask people, which is, are you growing or are you just getting older, right? Are you challenging yourself? Are you actually trying to push the needle to your limits? And if you're honest with yourself, if you're truly honest with yourself, are you pushing the needle the way you should? Are you really living this life to its fullest? Are you owning it today? Are you so scared to make a mistake? Because I think that's the other part is if you are conservative by nature, you're scared to make a mistake.
Yeah, we've had doctors admit that to us. They're like, I don't know what to do, and it scares me to invest that much in marketing, or it scares me to eventually grow this practice and have to bring on these team members because ultimately speaking, it's going to take me out of my comfort zone.
Well, I think what ends up happening is this idea, and I am an idealist and I'm an optimist, and I have no problem I'm a acknowledged
you an optimist? No.
So, but I think this idea, it's always captivating to me, and this is why I don't understand it when people aren't pushing it. I was talking to a doctor recently, and I was talking about my book, Financial Evolution, and the doctor had said to me, if this is all the insurance company's willing to pay, how could I ever do well? And then he was like, if my expenses are this high, how could I ever do well? And when he got done with his blame list, the blame list was so long. And I thought to myself, and it goes back to Financial Evolution, which I was in there. I talk about the thousands of meetings I've had, and thank you guys all that have bought it because Amazon keeps selling out, so that's a good thing. But when I think about the stage one person, the stage one person they truly believe, and this is the crazy part, they believe that if they can only make their income go up, then they'll be successful. Yeah. I was telling this dentist recently, I said, you just don't know how to manage cash flow. And he said, no, if the insurance company would pay me more money, then I would have more money left over. I said, no, you wouldn't. No. And I said, hey, look, let me give you an example. I said, let me ask you a question. So you got PPP funds. What'd you do with it? He was like, well, I mean, it just kind of, and he was like, it just went. And he goes, now I know what some of you are listening, it went to payroll. No, yes, it went to payroll, but there was another money that got swapped. That's right. Somewhere. There's money, right. If you get $100,000, now you have $100,000 you don't need to spend on payroll. Now you have $100,000 net, right? So where does that money go? Well, I don't know. Well, if you don't know where $100,000 went, then why do you think you'd make more money? You'd be better off. No, I guarantee you if I give you more money, it'll just disappear because there's a drain in the bottom of your funnel. And it's stage one thinking, believing that you'll become wealthier if you could just make more money. This is just completely not true. This is the hardest concept to get through to people, is that more money does not create more wealth. You might have more stuff.
Yeah.
But if you don't know how to manage money, if you don't know how to manage cash flow, if you don't know how to do those things, and then if you don't challenge yourself, some people are so scared. It goes back to scarcity mindset. It was funny. I was talking to somebody, I think it was like this morning, if I think about it, about what I invest in my own coaching. Mm-hmm. And they were like, what?
Yeah.
And I was like, well, where else do you think? I mean, don't you have to invest in yourself? Don't you invest in your own growth? And so, because I look at this and say, I only have one life to live. Best I know. This is the only shot I got.
Yeah. So
I look at that and go, all of you listening can think about this idea of like 5 years went by. Yeah. 7, now your phone pops up these photos, right?
Yeah, shared memories.
Right, memories when you're like, oh, look, and so you get these shared memories on your phone. But isn't it funny if we look at those shared memories, how time goes by? You're like, oh my God, that was 6 years ago? And when you see that, feel that thought, like that was 6 years ago, ask yourself the same question. If you look at that photo, maybe that's an assignment for this podcast. Yeah. It's like when that photo pops up, ask yourself, how far have I come from when that photo was taken? Yeah. My net worth, right? My acumen, my professional growth, my business. Since that last photo, how far have I come? Right? What have I done? Yeah. Have I just gotten older? Or have I grown? Yeah.
I think if you end up doing this, you got to avoid what we talk about all the time is the blame game almost, where you look back at this and say, well, I didn't get that done because of X, Y, Z. We see that too many times in the dental world. It's either you just got complacent or you've just come up with, what the marketplace tells you is the reason you didn't take it to the next level. It's because of that. So I think when you're thinking about and you're scrolling through, try to not think about the excuses that you're giving yourself to say, why I haven't done this. Or if I look at those photos, wow, I was a lot more handsome or pretty back in the day. But now it's all ultimately speaking you're doing is you got complacent at some point in your life.
It's always your fault.
Yeah.
Everything you have today is your fault. Good or bad, it's all your fault. It's all either you've attracted by the person you've become, you've either not done things or you've done things. And by the way, you're going to make mistakes. That's how you learn. You make dumb, boneheaded moves and you go, I won't do that again. Yeah. And that's part of the process. The people that are so scared, you're so conservative to make a mistake. It's like, I don't want to invest in that because what if it doesn't work? Let me tell you what, some investments are going to pan out and some aren't. That's just the way it is. I mean, it's the nature of it. Sometimes you're going to invest in a consulting relationship and you'll get some benefit more than others. Sometimes it'll be a marketing idea. Maybe it's a team member that you invested in. We've all bought that team member. We've all invested in a team member that came in. We thought they were going to be a rock star. And within very quickly, we're like, whoa, they fooled me, right? Mm-hmm. And so that's to say, what, you're never going to hire someone again? No, I mean, you're going to have that. So, but we look at this idea of vision in our life, and I was talking about vision on that last podcast, and I was talking about where we're going. And it's such a question of, are we truly growing? If you looked at yourself 12 months ago, how far have you come in your acumen? Yeah. How far has your business grown? The individuals I was talking about taking on 2 locations since then. Look, I mean, you've got to think about this and start saying, like, what am I doing? What am I doing? Yeah. And here's what gives us solace. We think about the people around us. We go, well, Jim didn't buy another location, and he's at the country club on Friday, and so he seems to be just fine.
He seems great.
And I love the blameless idea. This idea of like, well, you got to have balance, right? Balance is a word that people utilize to keep you in the damn middle. Yep. Look, the greatest people on earth don't have balance. No, they can choose to go on vacation. When they go on vacation, they do that shit right. Yeah. Why? Because they go all in everything they do. When it's their marriage, they go all in. When it comes to their business, they go on. They don't balance shit. They go all in with what they're going to do. Yeah. This idea of balance is a word utilized to marginalize people and keep you in the middle and keep you satisfied. So that way, when you don't grow, when you don't become better, you can go, well, I was just trying to get some balance. You can't take it with you, right? I mean,
there's more and more speakers that are like debunking the work-life balance situation. One of the best examples I got was Grant Cardone. And if you guys listen to him or not, he's just like an influential speaker. And he said every time somebody goes like they want work-life balance and they end up saying, all right, well, I'm going to take a vacation, and they do a week-long vacation. What happens when you come back from that week-long vacation? You're stressed out. You have so much stuff that piled up over it. And he's like, you need to get yourself to a point where you can take a month off and not have to worry about
right.
anything.
That's right.
You know, don't worry about work-life balance now. Worry about working, and then eventually balance will come. But you have to put the work in now. You can't be complacent.
I had someone who was recently, I had a doctor reach out, and they were working 3 days a week, and they're like, I just don't know why I can't grow. I'm like, you work 3 days a week, man. What do you want? Like, I mean,
what do you think's going to happen?
You got to put the work in first. I'm sorry. Like, there's no magic wand. It's like, and then when I was like, well, you probably need to open your doors. It was like, well, I don't want to work more than 3 days a week. I'm like, well, then you don't get much money. Like that's, I don't have a magic pill. If you don't want to work, you don't get much money. That's the way kind of the economy works.
You got to build it up. I mean, you get to a point where you
can have scalability and you can have other doctors work, which is what I preach.
Yeah.
And you can bring in scalability, but you have to get the business up to a revenue standpoint where you can bring in other doctors. And even when you bring another doctor, you got to get the revenues up and then bring in another doctor and then the revenues up. So the idea that we don't, and that goes back to this, concept, I don't want to get too far off it, this idea of, am I growing in my business? And does it matter to you?
Yeah.
I agree with this idea of balance. This idea of balance to me is like, balance, look, here's why balance doesn't work. I'm going to tell you why. Balance is not intentional.
Yeah.
See, intentionality is, I'm going to take a kick-ass vacation with my family this summer. I'm going to pay cash. I'm going to and I'm going to go all in. That's not balance. It's intentionality.
Yeah.
See, and what ends up happening is somebody goes, well, I'm going to work every third Friday or whatever it is. I'm going to be intentional with my family. See, the person who's not intentional with their time, who's not intentional with their career, they're not intentional with their life. They're not intentional with their off time. They're not intentional. So this idea of balance is, it gives them the ability to sit back and go, well, I'm trying to have balance. And it's, now the first thing when I start talking like this is somebody would go, they look around and they go, well, I look at everybody else and they're doing this.
Doing it too.
I'm like, in what world did you want to be average?
Yeah.
In what world did you wake up and go, I hope someday that I'm the average of most, right?
Most people in my profession.
Right. I mean, I wouldn't have woken up that way. Now, some of you might have already turned the podcast off. You're like, I don't like this guy. Why? Because I'm challenging you to say, and I don't care where you are. Even if you got 5 locations, I'm like, I still challenge you. What is capable? What can you do? And are you, because by the way, some people, and I've noticed this, let's just say that you get up to 5 million, they'll get to 5 million and then they'll coast. But because they got to 5 million, they're like, well, look, I've got a $5 million practice, so now I can coast.
Yeah.
What? Like, why did you get a $5 million practice? I mean, the idea was to continue to grow. And by the way, you can stop at a $5 million practice, but the question is, how are you growing?
Yeah.
Are you now just getting old? Because now you're like, well, I make $50,000 a month.
Yeah.
Life's good. I'm just going to get old.
Yeah.
Well, I'm telling you, it's easier to climb. It's easier to grow. It's easier to be better. So I love that quote, because as soon as I heard it, I was like, wow. Because someone told me recently, they're like, Eric, you're always in your head. You're always in your head. You're always thinking about things. Like, this is literally how it went. It was like, you gotta just live life, and you're always in your head. Sometimes you just gotta enjoy it. Now, it didn't really sound like that, but that was an accent that I needed to use. That was like an accent I needed to use because it just sounded right for that voice. And this person was actually even a female, so it didn't really even go at all with it. But the point is that look, this idea of like, well, you're always in your head. Hell yes, I am, because it takes intentionality of thought to grow. It takes intentionality of money to grow. It takes intentionality of purpose, right, to grow. When we think about growing, like, that's what it's all about.
Yeah.
I don't want to get to the end of my life and realize I only lived half of it, or I had balance. That I'm going to tell you who has balance. When you have a tremendous net worth, giant revenue, and no debt,
then you have balance.
Right. And I'm going to tell you right now, that's a whole.
That was the whole purpose of that. The motivational speakers are like, there'll be a point where you can have all the balance you want to in your life. All the balance you want. And those couple vacations you normally take throughout the year would seem very minuscule to what you'll be able to accomplish if you just focus in.
If you just focus in. And if you think you can work 3 days a week before you've gotten the practice where it needs to be.
Yeah.
I remember years ago, I was in the investment world, and I worked at this investment firm, and it was interesting. Like, you'd have these new guys come in, and they would see the senior guys, and what they would do is they would try to mimic the senior guys. But the senior guys had busted their butt and cold called and prospected and done all this for 20 years. Yeah. And the new guy's like, well, I'm going to work 3 days a week and I'm going to work 5 hours a day. I'm like, No. You got to put the work in on the front side so that you get to be.
You get to that point.
And so, I think that what I want someone to take away from this podcast is: are you challenging yourself enough? I don't care where you are. The worst thing you could do is listen to this podcast and go, "Oh, I'm good."
Yeah.
Right. I'm hearing what he's saying, but I challenge myself plenty. If Elon Musk, and I keep going back to it because it just blows me away, if Elon Musk can create SpaceX, and create the world's most valuable car company, and he can create Neuralink, which now is going in people's brains to hopefully cure paralysis.
Well, if you think about Elon, it's the same situation. He sold PayPal. If he would have just not done anything,
right?
like we'd have no Tesla, we'd have no SpaceX, we'd have no tunnels going underneath. There'd be no.
I don't even bring that up. And he's got a newborn.
Yeah.
But the Neuralink.
All of that would have not happened. Like, he would have just been complacent.
What a great point. I mean, look, once he sold PayPal, he could have just.
He got a check.
Bought an island, sat there somewhere, and just chilled, right? But he would have just been getting old.
Yep.
And it's such a great point because people say, once I get to this one place, then I will just get old. No, it's not.
Yeah.
The purpose of life is to not stop. It's not to sit. And now you look at Elon Musk and say, look, you're right. Neuralink has the potential to cure Parkinson's, paralysis, all those things. I mean, look at the way Tesla has revolutionized the transportation industry. Putting people on Mars. I mean, you think about what he's doing, and then somebody tells me that their goal is to go from 1 million to 1.2, and it just blows my mind. I'm like, that. Yeah. So if Elon, and I'm not asking you to be Elon Musk. I think Elon Musk is obviously
generational.
Depending on the week, he's the richest person in the world. Depending on the week, but him and Bezos are fighting it out.
Yeah.
But if you look at it and say, if he can do all that, and that's the whole reason I bring Elon Musk up. If he can do all that, what can you do?
Yeah.
How can you challenge yourself to grow? Why can you only have one organization? Why can you only do so much? If he can do all that, why can't you do more? Don't just get old. Grow. Challenge yourself. It's the message of this podcast.
Love it. I think it's what people need to hear.
Glad to have you here. Hey, watch on YouTube, subscribe, like, pass it along to a friend. Look, the greatest groups are the ones that look, a message like today. Now I'll go on one more tangent as we finish up. The message like today is this. Like there will be people that are the most successful practices that listen to this and they go, wow. It's interesting. I was having a conversation yesterday and somebody just turned it off when I was like wrapping up and they didn't hear this part, but that's okay. I was having a conversation yesterday. I said, the people who really truly know my value and know our value and know how to utilize it are the most successful people. Yeah. The ones that aren't successful never understood. They were too busy, right? They never even stood what was in front of them and what could have happened had they just leaned into it because they're not growing. The people that are high producers, the offices that are doing 5, 7, 8 million, 10 million plus, they know the value. So they're like, wow, this I can grow tremendously. Yeah. So, it is this idea of this mindset and not using your blame list and going back and saying, no matter where I'm at, how do I grow my life, grow my potential, and grow my future? And on that note, I'll say, have a good one.